I just know you're going to love the guests that we have on in this episode, so don't go away. Welcome to the interview. I'm Dr. Rick Wadge, and I have a special guest who's really a part of this ITVN family. That is Margy Pezdirtz.
Hi, Rick.
Hi, Margy. You're back in town.
I'm back in town. I'm always so happy to come back to Texas. I'm an Oklahoma girl that's learned to love Texas.
Why is that? Because of our mountains?
Yeah, because it's so fun.
All the streams?
Because of the mountains of wonderful people. How's that for you? I have had the pleasure over the last, say, 10 years of doing a lot of traveling in Texas. And as I've become acquainted with and come to love Texans, I love the state. And my son moved to Texas a few years ago. And I said, save me in case everything goes, Texas does withdraw from the Union and everything goes bad. I said, save me a seat. He said, Mom, they're going to blow the bridges. And I said, bring a boat. So I love Texas and Texans. It's good.
It's very different for me than any other place I've lived
Really?
or even traveled through because the patriotism.
Yes.
Every place that I've been so far in Texas has been very conservative. People are very friendly. I think I've said this to you before, and you said, well, you must have heard that from somewhere else. and that is that it seems like they're all family you just hadn't met.
I do think that's a good statement. It is.
It feels that way to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I have some friends in Brady, Texas, little teeny tiny town in the middle of nowhere. I could just move in with them and just live forever because they're precious. But I find that all over Texas.
I do too.
Wonderful people.
Every restaurant we go to, every bookstore, every department store, people are friendly and kind and conservative. It's like I remember when I grew up when I was very young.
Yeah.
And you don't see that in a lot of places like you do here.
There's a down-home attitude here. Y'all are welcome. Come on in. I
That's
like
true.
that. I even have cowboy boots now.
The
And I'm going to get some for my granddaughter who's going to school in New York.
Well, I love it. I'm glad you're here in Texas. You have been filming
Yes.
2 days straight.
2 days. I'm tired.
And so let's talk about what you've been filming.
I am so excited over this new series. I really struggled and I prayed about it and thought, what shall I do? What shall I do? And I came up with a series. It starts off with the Jacob's sons, who are the 12 tribes of Israel, who are the foundation. We talk Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but we don't get past that. And it's those 12 sons who are the tribes of Israel, who are the foundation, of what they started building the state on. And so I started with there, and I went through some of the kings of Israel. Not all of them, there were so many. But I touched on some of the kings, the good, the bad, and the not so nice. And then I came back and I talked about some of the things, I was recently in Israel. And I talked about a couple of incidences that happened there, and having seen the Ezekiel stones and the Isaiah scroll on the same day within an hour of each other.
Okay,
And-
don't forget about that because I want to come back.
Oh, I want to tell you about
Okay,
that.
all
It's so exciting. And then going northern Israel with a friend to Gush Halav, which is a totally Christian village.
I have not been there. Where is it? It's not as far as Hermon, obviously.
No,
Mount
no,
Hermon.
because it's in the opposite direction.
Okay.
Hermon is over to the northeast.
Okay.
And this is northwest. You know where Safat is?
Yes.
Okay, so you go around Safat. Now, I did have one bad experience in Israel. It broke my heart. I like to drive like Mario Andretti, and always thought that road going up to and down from Safat, that was curvy, curvy, curvy. And if I could drive that without a bus or truck in my way, I thought I was Mario. They've made a new road, and it goes around Safat, and you don't get to do that downshift.
That was your bad
That was
experience?
my bad experience. I can't drive like a race car, but it was
You want
fun.
us to pause for a moment of prayer? Or
Well, I'm thankful for the new road. It was very, very nice. Very nice.
Okay, now, as we're filming this morning, a dear friend of Israel TV Network is Duran Kidar. You can
Yes.
follow Duran. He's a friend of all of ours.
Yes, he is.
You can follow Duran on his Facebook page, and I really recommend you do, because Duran keeps up on the current news of what's going on. Now, this morning, I don't know if you knew
I've not
it.
heard the news this morning.
This morning, they've been getting rockets. Yes. So he said they were targeting civilians in his post. So I don't know what that means. I've been working,
Okay.
so I haven't had a chance to watch the news.
I haven't heard the news either. My sister has an app on her phone that tells her when rockets go off.
Yeah, red alert.
Yeah, and where it hits. I don't have that on my phone. I guess I need to put it on there, but it would make me crazy. You know, she comes in and tells me all the time. We have to pray for Israel. If there's nothing else we can do, pray for Israel. And when we pray, my group prays, we pray for her airspace, her water supply, her borders, and her underground, because they're tunneling in from all directions now.
Right.
And so I'm also praying that God sends the mighty winds from the east to blow back,
The
the
fires.
kites.
I'll talk about that in case people aren't keeping up
Oh
with us.
my gosh. What do we think of kites? We think of kites as these sweet things that children
You
play.
do with your kids.
Yeah, and David taught all of our kids how to fly kites, and it was wonderful and everything. These kites, simple kites, they're flying them up and they're tying Molotov cocktails to them and lighting them. And so when they hit, I don't know, they cut the strings on the kite, so they're just free flowing. And when they land, and they will land, they create it's like a mini bomb, but it's a fire bomb.
In the fields.
In the fields, in the forest, in the homes. They've burned some homes. On the highway, wherever they land, they're going to start a fire. And so the fires are like this all over Israel. How can you get enough firefighters there? And so they're burning up wheat fields, orchards, you name it, all out of hatred. It is nothing but hatred involved in it. Israel didn't cause this.
Okay, so what really is difficult for me is that when I watch the news,
Yeah.
I barely hear anything at all about this. Margy,
disgusting.
what's your recommendation until Israel TV Networks gets people on the ground
Yeah.
with regular reports?
Right.
Where can people go to watch updated news?
The best place I know of is to go on internet and plug in to some of the Israel programs coming live out of Israel. There's one thing called Daily Alert,
Okay.
and that is really, really good. It's Ambassador Dory.
And this is video.
It's not video, it's like news, and
Okay.
and then they will link you to something, and
Okay.
you can go to that.
Yeah.
Some of the ministries coming out of Israel have daily alerts going on. I noticed just before I left home, John Hagee had come onto Facebook with an alert to pray because of the fires, because of stuff. So Facebook has alerts. Some of the ministries, particularly in Judea and Samaria, have alerts because they're the targets. And so you just have to go online and find pro-Israel ministries that are posting. And
I-24.
I-24 is good, and Channel 2 out of Israel, if you can tie into that, Channel 2 is
In
definitely
English?
it's
or
in
Hebrew?
English on Sundays. Sunday afternoons in English. In fact, one of the broadcasters is a former Oklahoman who made Aliyah.
Okay.
So his English is Southern. But anyhow, you can
Do they translate that?
not quite. I'll speak Southern Hebrew. Oh, see my boots. But he's really good. So if you get on and you start looking, another place I know that's really doing some good stuff is Unity Coalition for Israel.
Oh.
She's out of Kansas City. She's 93 years old. The most amazing little Jewish lady you've ever seen in your life. I just love her. And she posts daily. And it's like click, 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 click. And she is posting.
Oh.
She's posting articles, plus she has links to videos
Okay,
that you can
good.
see. And she's very good.
It's the daily updates that we need.
Hourly,
And,
almost.
and we are working on this hard to get people on the ground in these different disaster areas, but specifically Israel, because Israel TV Network, I mean,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
tied
yeah.
to our Israeli brothers and sisters.
If we look, my heart beats with Jewish blood, I do believe, because I so love Israel. I so love my Jewish brothers and sisters. And every time I go, I meet new friends. And it's so interesting because sometimes they're like this, and sometimes they're like, y'all, come on in. And
What's the difference?
well, the difference is for years, Jews have been treated badly, very badly, unfortunately, at the hands of Christians. And oftentimes Christians have pretended to be friendly with Jews, and their whole idea was
With a
evangelizing.
purpose,
Yes,
exactly.
with strings attached,
Yes.
evangelizing. And so when you say to a Jew, you can trust me, I am not going to evangelize you, you kind of have to prove it. And over the years, well, in fact, years ago, David and I were going to Israel, and the Lord said, just shut up and listen. You'll learn something. And when we did that, and we did, because it was like, oh, you got that one. And we began really listening instead of trying to tell them everything that we knew and how precious, darling, and wonderful we were. We just shut up and began listening. And when we did that, doors flung open for us because there was no agenda other than absolute love, loving them right where they are. I'm not supposed to evangelize them. That's not my problem. That's up to God, and He's a lot bigger than I am. So I don't even believe in evangelizing anymore. So sorry, people, if you don't like that, but deal with it. So.
That's a whole nother issue. I'll touch on it. I agree with you. I think everyone will come to know God through Messiah. I'm not a universalist.
Nope.
I believe that we make decisions. But the Jews have a covenant with God that God formed with them.
Yes.
It came from Him to a people group. And they have a covenant with God. And every Jew that I have had close contact with does not believe that they have a relationship with God because of what they do, but because of their faith and trust
Yes.
in Him
Yes.
and what He does,
Yes.
His covenant.
Yes.
And to me, that's biblical faith,
Right.
100%. So God says He's going to keep His deal.
Yeah.
We have seen that historically
Yes, we have.
with the people, with the land, with the book. So why would I doubt God? Now that comes down to my own faith, not the faith of the Jews.
Yeah.
Can I believe God will keep His contract that He said would last until heaven and earth passes away
Exactly.
and beyond?
Yeah.
I have to trust God. Now, I have to focus on my own backyard, not somebody else's.
That's true.
And that is, I have to have the faith to trust that God has a perfect plan for my Jewish brothers and sisters, as well as my own life, my own family, my own friends.
Yeah.
And that is through faith in what God is doing through Messiah. He's always done, He is doing, and He always will do.
Absolutely. Look, I think if you start reading Torah and the Tanakh, which is what we call the Old Testament, I always want to tear that page out that's in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. The introductory page that says New Testament, tear it out and just put one in there that says, and continuing, But in reading Torah and Tanakh, you begin to see where God says to the Jews repetitively, I brought you out of Egypt. Remember that. Don't forget it. And He says, trust me. And when they would get into trouble was when they didn't trust Him and they would pray to idols and to foreign gods and that kind of thing. If they just trust Him, I believe the people God has allowed me to have in my life, which are such blessings, they trust Him. They trust Him.
Right.
And one of the things
Not because of what they do, but because of the faithfulness of Almighty God.
Right. And one of the things I did while I was in Israel, I write books, and I was interviewing survivors of terror, Jewish survivors of terror. And
See, when you say survivors, my mind immediately goes to the Holocaust.
I know,
But that is not the beginning or the end of Jewish woe.
no,
It continues
On
to today.
and on and on. So for years, God has laid this book on my heart. And finally, I felt like I had the ability to start working on it. and start being the key word. It's a long ways from finished. But I was able, because I have Jewish friends who do trust me, they were able to help me to set up interviews with Jewish survivors of terror. Some were the personal recipient of the terror or their family member was murdered. And murder is the word here. And I didn't know what to expect. When I went to interview these people, I didn't know whether I was going to be a bawling mess, what would happen. And I made my sister go with me. We were together in Israel. I made her go with me. She didn't want to go into the interview, so she would go to the office, CFOIC office, and sit and wait while I did the interview. The first couple were in Carnation Road. I used to work with Christian Friends of Israeli Community in Sandra Barras, and we're very good friends. And so my sister went there and stayed while I interviewed the survivors in Carnation Road, Sandra's community. The first one I went, I was very timid. I wasn't real sure what questions to ask and what territory I was standing on. I walked out of there so astounded at the faith and the trust in God. Their daughter had been blown to smithereens by a terrorist just because she went out for pizza after Shabbat. She and two of her friends were murdered, and several others were injured. And their faith, it was so beyond anything. Now, I thank God I've never lost a child. I don't know how I would react, and I don't want to find out. But their faith and their trust. And so I thought, well, okay, so this is this couple. So the next night, I had another interview in the same location, Carnation Road, with this man who's in a wheelchair, paralyzed from the waist down. He and his wife and children were traveling home from Kfar Saba back to their community where Sandra lives. And just about the same time they got a radio alert, they're shooting on the highway, they were shot. And they were passing a slow-moving car, and as they passed, they were fired on. And his wife was murdered. She was 5 months pregnant. He was shot 5 times, and their daughter in the back seat was shot and paralyzed. And so here he loses his wife and his child to be born. He lost all of it, and he was shot in the face as well, and the hand, as well as paralyzed, not even knowing his daughter in the back seat has been paralyzed. He tells me this whole story, and I'm going, oh, dear Lord. He is the most positive man. I left there laughing. And I thought, how can this be? And it's because of his faith and his trust in God. And I walked out there and I told Sandra, I don't know who I'm going to be when I finish this book, because it is so encouraging and so uplifting, and just hearing these people, I mean, your heart breaks, and yet your heart rejoices because they've come out of this. They're heroes. Whether they were personally injured, like with a gun or whatever, or whether their loved one was killed, maimed, whatever, they come out praising God because they trust him. And their idea of what happens to the soul when this person is murdered, prematurely, die prematurely, they believe the soul goes immediately into the highest heaven, and the blessings that overflow. And almost every one of these survivors have started a foundation or some kind of a way of, we use the word ministry, they use the word help, and they're helping others through their foundations that they've set up. None of them are moneyed people, but they're using whatever they have to help others. And the guy in the wheelchair that I interviewed, he is remarried. And he married somebody that I already knew. And in the wedding pictures, he's standing on these crutch things, that hook on here and here. He was determined he would stand for his wedding. And so here he is. He had 5 children, not including the one that was murdered in the womb. And she had 5 children. She was a divorcee. They married with 10 kids, and everybody, they're just like any other family that is a blended family. They put their lives together. The kids did this age-wise, and the story is fantastic. The guy drives. He still works. And I said, so do you have plans to retire? Oh, yeah, I'm going to retire in 9 years. And so what are you going to do? I'm going to help others. And so then I found out from someone else. He didn't tell me. Actually, Sandra told me. Because Sandra's mother was in a car accident while I was in there. So she was in the hospital. And this man in the wheelchair, goes to the hospital to visit Sandra's mother to encourage her. And I'm going, Lord, I just feel like we're about this big because we're so full of ourselves. And I see, and I've talked to these people who are so incredibly amazing, how they've pulled their life back together and they go on. One of the women I talked to was attacked, she and her friend. She's Jewish, her friend's Christian. They were hiking in the mountains just out of Jerusalem, attacked by 2 Arab terrorists, knifed. She watched her friend murdered before her eyes. She watched her friend. I think she was beheaded, but that was never said. And she was stabbed 13 times. All these organs. We think, excuse me, when somebody gets stabbed, they get stabbed. Well, there are organs involved, and her lungs, and she had broken bones from the force, stabbing with machetes. And I'm thinking, what it hurts when you cut your finger with a knife. She's stabbed with machete. They've taken her shoes. They took her boots. They took the shoestrings out of her boots, tied her hands behind her back, gagged her with the fleece jacket that her friend had on, tore it up, gagged the 2 women. And then she managed, when she finally was sure that they were gone, she managed to walk almost a mile, shoeless, hands tied behind her back, gagged. And I said, how did you do that? And she's a pianist, a jazz pianist. And she said, my favorite song is Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And she said, I kept thinking, somewhere there's a place for me over the rainbow. And she said, I kept thinking, how would I replay that song? How would I record that song? And she said, that's what got me to help. And she got to a parking lot. There was like a picnic table close to the parking lot. And when she got there, she collapsed. And there were people there, got her the help because of her. And when the attack started, she had a little penknife. And she somehow managed to stab or cut one of the attackers. Well, they found the penknife at the scene, and the attacker's blood was on it. And because of her, they broke up a whole terrorist ring. Because she had the foresight to stab this guy and get his blood, his DNA, and they were able to track him down. Then she had to go to court and testify. And the courtrooms are not like here. I mean, it's like you just walk into a room and here's the judge and here's the terrorist and here's the victims and oh, here's the crowd, what little crowd there is. And she talked about this. I've written about this already in the book. Just the emotion of sitting there as close as you and I are, and these guys are mocking her, laughing. And they've said that the reason they killed Christine was because they thought she was a Jew. It's like, it's okay, we can kill her, she's a Jew, nobody cares. And the thing is, I'm not sure the world does care. So anyhow, I have to finish the book. It's a hard book, very hard to write, because it's so deep. Very deep.
It's sad to hear these stories,
Yeah.
but this is just a drop in the ocean of what the Jews are having to deal with and have had to deal with for the last 4,000 years.
Yeah.
You know, it is strange in some ways without looking at the prophets. The prophets make it a little clearer. But
Yes.
It's very strange that our world of injustice and fighting for the whales and fighting for this and fighting for equal rights and transgender causes and all the things, yet a very, very small amount of people even are aware of the unfairness going on to a whole people group.
Right. Right.
Just because of their not even their nationality, just because of their bloodline.
Right. Right. And you know what? I did a whole program on this one thing. Our friend took us to this village in northern Israel I was talking to you about called Gush Halav. And sometimes you can't even find it on the map under that name. It's under the name Jish, Jish. On some maps, I had to look and look and look before I found it. And so he said, I'll take you there. And he picked us up. He drove us there. Now, my friend, his name was Eli Lato, and our connection is hysterical. He came out a number of years ago with this bumper sticker that's about this big, and it's blue and white. One side's white with blue lettering, the other side's blue with white lettering. And it says CNN Lies. Well, being the ardent Zionist I am,
I'd like to have that on my car.
I have one at home. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Anyhow, he's a totally secular Jew, but he's Jewish. And he's from America. He moved to Israel when he was 19 years old. He's like 68 now. Anyhow, he picked my sister and I up, and he took us to this village. And when he found out that I was coming, because I am a writer, he said, I want to borrow your writing expertise. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's always an intrigue. I never know when somebody says that to me, as a writer, you never know for sure where we're going with this. And I thought, okay. So he said, I want to take you to this Christian village. His whole premise was that here we are in the Middle East, where Christians are being killed by the thousands, heads chopped off, forced into all kinds of things, the women raped, punished, tortured, children hung on crosses. And he said, I want to take you to this Christian village in Israel where Christians worship freely and openly. And so he went ahead, he picked us up and we went up there, and it was amazing. And I want to tell you that whole story. And I know.
I want to hear it.
Okay.
We're going to do this in a two-part.
Okay.
So we'll come back. Margy Pezdirtz, thank you for being a dear friend. Family for ITVN, Israel TV Network, my own family as well. And thank you for being a part of Israel TV Network. You really are. It's not just what we broadcast, it's who we broadcast to and for. And we're so appreciative that you also are a people that are strong. You worship the God of Israel, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that you stand with the Jewish people. You also stand with the Christians who are trying to do the right thing for the right causes. And we just so appreciate you. We look forward to seeing you again in the next episode, where we continue learning more about what's going on in Israel. Margy Pezdirtz's brand new season of Serendipity, which you're going to want to definitely watch on ITVN. We'll see you next time. Shalom, shalom.